Void's blessings, strangers. Brother from the Void speaking. Welcome back to Tales from the Void. Tonight we're not doing grand heroics, shiny banners, or glory of war. We're down in a bunker where time has stopped. The air tastes like metal, and every morning starts with the same question. Are we still alive? And for how long? We follow a handful of exhausted survivors, soldiers and civilians jammed into concrete walls, living on routine, stubbornness, and whatever hope they can scrape off the floor. Outside, the city is being torn apart. Inside, the real fight is staying human, while everything around you tries to grind you into paste. So yeah, get comfortable. If you can, keep your voice down. Listen for the vibrations in the walls. Because in the dark, you don't need to see trouble to know it's coming.
In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. I used to think that was just a slogan, a bit of martial propaganda. Now it's my daily reality. War is the air I breathe, the water I drink, the nightmare I can't wake from. It's been 87 days since this siege began on our world, and life has been reduced to the 4 claustrophobic walls of this bunker and the struggle to see another day. I wake to the sound of distant artillery and the concrete around me trembling. There's no natural dawn in here, no sunrise to mark a new day. Time blurs into one long, perpetual midnight punctuated by gunfire. The faint glow of failing lumen-strips overhead is our only sunlight. This morning, if it is morning, those lights flicker weakly as another concussive thump reverberates from somewhere above. Dust sifts down from hairline cracks in the ceiling, adding to the gritty film that coats everything. The smell hits me next, a mix of stale sweat, recycled air, and the ever-present tang of promethium from the generator. We've been breathing the same air for weeks, filtered and refiltered through half-functional scrubbers. It's damp and metallic, laced with the sour odor of too many unwashed bodies in too little space. We do what we can to keep clean, scrubbing down with rationed water, scraping ourselves with scavenged lye soap, but we're down to mere drops of disinfectant. The latrine buckets in the corner are emptied into a deep maintenance pit and dusted with chem powder to mask the waste, but the stench still hangs in the air. We joke in our macabre way that the smell alone could kill a grot. It's the odor of fear and fatigue, but perversely it's also the smell of life, proof that we're still here to make it. I peel myself off the thin mattress I've laid out in a niche by a warm steam pipe. My joints protest as I stand. Days of sleeping on cold rock crete will do that. I stretch my stiff limbs and rub the sandy grit from my eyes. Every muscle aches, and why not? There's been no real rest in this place. I sleep in fits and starts, 20 minutes of exhausted blackout at a time, until the next distant explosion or nightmare jolts me awake. Often I dream of the bombardment. I'm outside under a boiling orange sky, running as the ground buckles and buildings collapse. I always wake right as the dream blast hits, heart pounding, arms clutching at the darkness. Sometimes I'm not sure which is worse, the nightmare, or knowing that outside our battered bunker, it's even worse. Across the chamber, a few others are already stirring in the dim red glow of a failing emergency luminary. We move like wraiths in semi-darkness. Sergeant Colt is up, as always, pacing the perimeter of our main room with that purposeful stride of his. He's a hard man in his late 30s, built of corded muscle and sheer determination. He stops to check on 2 of the perimeter guards, giving them each a nod or a few quiet words. His augmetic eye, a red gleam in the semi-dark, whirs softly as it scans for any sign of trouble. Calt's one of the Planetary Defense Force soldiers who got sealed in with us civilians when the attacks overwhelmed the city. Emperor, bless him, he's kept us organized, barking orders when needed, sharing a dry joke when morale slumps, and enforcing discipline with a glare that could cow an ogrin. Under that stern facade, I think he's just as exhausted as the rest of us, but he never lets it show. Near the far wall, Father Elim kneels before a makeshift shrine, a dented Aquila icon set into a cracked alcove. The old Ministorum priest's lips move in quiet, rapid prayer, whispering the same lines he does every morning. I catch a few words. Emperor protects. Deliver us from evil. His voice is soft but carries in the silence between distant shell bursts. A couple of people nearby bow their heads along with him, murmuring responses by habit. The Litany of Dawn, maybe. It's the closest thing we have to a daily ritual. I'm not particularly devout myself. I've often wondered how much the God Emperor really intervenes in the lives of folks like us in a galaxy as vast and cruel as this. But even I find a bit of comfort in those familiar words. If nothing else, it reminds me that we're still human, still clinging to something like hope or faith in this bleak hole. And who knows, maybe someone or something is listening. Routine helps. It gives us a shred of purpose and normalcy, and Sergeant Calt knows it. All right, rise and shine, he calls gruffly as he finishes his circuit. He doesn't yell, sound carries in these tight confines, but his voice is firm, the tone of a man used to being obeyed. A few more figures stir from their bedrolls or makeshift cots. Another day in paradise, I hear Corporal Tariq joke darkly as he passes by me, slinging his rifle over his shoulder. I half smile at that. If our situation's a paradise, paradise must be a humorless void with concrete walls and not a scrap of sunlight. My stomach growls, reminding me of the one part of morning routine I can't skip. I shuffle toward the center of the bunker, where a line is forming near the ration crates. Magda, a wiry, gray-haired hab food vendor in her former life, is ladling out something from a large tin to a couple of the kids, Tomas and Leora, the brother and sister who have become our bunker's adopted children. They lost their parents in the first bombardment, and Magda's sort of taken them under wing. She soothes the little ones with soft clucks as she hands them their breakfasts. Nearby, Jaren, a big former mine worker with arms like grot's haunches, stands quietly in line, idly sharpening a scrap of metal into a shiv for the 100th time. Not far off, I see the dim red glow of Enginseer Halix's optics in a side alcove. Our resident tech priest is literally plugged into the bunker's generator console via a bundle of cables running from ports on his augmetic spine. His cowled head twitches as he communes with the machine spirits, a faint stream of binaric cant issuing from his vox grill. Around him, a few sticks of incense smolder in makeshift holders, filling that corner with an oily smoke. Helix is more cogitator than man at this point, but he's the reason our generator and air scrubbers are still ticking at all. Even now, I can hear him intoning a scrap of Mechanicus prayer under his breath as his mechadendrites adjust some dial. Deus Mechanicus, bless thy eternal works. Whatever he's doing, I silently thank him. His tireless vigilance has kept us with light and air, and I don't even want to imagine what would happen if he ever faltered. I take my place at the back of the ration line. We're down to maybe 50 of us now in this section of the bunker, half what we started with. The survivors are a motley mix of civilian refugees and a handful of PDF troopers. Some faces are gaunt, eyes sunken from hunger and lack of sleep. But there's a grim determination in the air as well. We're all still here, still fighting in our own way. At the head of the line, Corporal Tariq pries open a fresh tin and begins doling out our daily allotment. 1 tin, 1 cup. he mutters, as he hands portions to each person. He used to recite the Ministorum ration regulations with a bit of ironic flair each morning. 1 tin, 1 cup per person per day. Praise the Emperor's benevolence. But after nearly 3 months of siege, even his sardonic humor has worn thin. Now it's all business. When I reach the front, Tariq offers me a shallow bowl filled with a grayish paste, the ever-glorious Imperial corpse-starch ration, and a tin cup of lukewarm recaf. "Enjoy," he says dryly. Under his breath, meant only for me, he adds, "Last crate of starch. This is it." I nod curtly, taking the bowl and cup. I force myself not to react visibly to that news. Panic helps no one, and I can tell by Tariq's drawn expression he's trusting me to keep quiet. Last crate, Emperor. After tomorrow or the next day, there'll be nothing left to distribute. The thought sends a chill through me that the cold air couldn't. I move along to let the next hungry soul take my place, heart heavy. I settle down cross-legged on the floor, my back against a cool rock-crete wall. Breakfast, if one can call it that, stares up at me from the bowl. Corpse-starch paste, a synthetic protein gruel made from Emperor knows what, and I try not to think too hard about the corpse part of the name. It has the consistency of half-dried mortar and looks about as appetizing. Complaining about it is technically an act of sedition in some places. On many Hive worlds, if a laborer dares gripe that their rations taste like corpses, even though they do, they'd earn a one-way trip to a penal colony. But here, none of us care about that anymore. We openly call it corpse gruel or corpse porridge, and no enforcer is around to bother. I scoop a fingerful of the gray paste and shovel it into my mouth. It's gritty and bland with a chemical aftertaste. If I concentrate hard, I can maybe detect a hint of spice. Probably just the preservatives. More likely, I'm imagining it. In truth, it tastes like wallpaper paste with undertones of boot leather. It's vile, but it quiets the growling in my belly, and that's all that matters. We have a saying now. Hunger is the best seasoning. Emperor knows we've been plenty hungry. I swallow the pulp down and chase it with a swig of recaf from the tin cup. The recaf is bitter and weak, more dreg than calf, and it's gone lukewarm. Our heating element broke 2 weeks ago, and fuel is too scarce to waste on hot drinks. Still, it's at least fluid and contains a little caffeine. The water in it has a faint metallic tang. Our recycling purifier has seen better days, so it's like drinking rusty, burnt tea. But I relish the warmth it spreads through my chest. You take your pleasures where you can find them. As I eat, I survey our little community. Huddled clusters of people chew quietly or whisper in low voices. We've partitioned this main chamber with a few cargo crates and hung tarps for a semblance of privacy in spots. But one can still see almost everything. Off to my left, old Magda is carefully dividing her portion between the 2 children, giving them each extra. I worry about her. She's been skimping on her own meals to feed those kids, and her cheeks have hollowed alarmingly. But try convincing her to put herself first. She'd sooner wrestle an orc than take food from a child's mouth. Across the way, near a pile of sandbags and an impromptu firing slit, Private Laren mans the heavy stubber position. He's one of Kalt's PDF, a wiry fellow with a nervous energy. He's eating one-handed while his other hand fusses over the stubber's belt feed, wiping away dust, checking the mechanism for the 1,000th time. As he chews a bite of starch, he notices me watching and offers a thumbs up. I return a faint smile. He's saying in his way that everything's quiet on watch for now. Boom! A distant explosion rumbles somewhere far above, echoing down to us through collapsed corridors and ventilation shafts. The faint tremor passes through the floor. No one in the bunker panics. We've grown used to those ominous thuds like others might get used to thunder in a storm. Still, a few eyes lift to the ceiling instinctively, and conversations pause for a breath. When it doesn't escalate, people resume their murmured talk. Just the morning bombardment, right on schedule. I spoon the last of the bland paste from my bowl, wiping it clean with my finger. Emperor willing, it won't be my last meal. We've all heard stories of other sieges where people ended up doing unthinkable things when the rations ran out. I try not to let my mind wander down that path. Instead, I wash the paste down with the remainder of my recaf, savoring the bitterness. My brief moment of solitude is interrupted by a sharp crackle from a Vox speaker mounted on the wall. It's followed by the shrill two-tone alarm that signals incoming fire. "Heads up!" Laren barks from his post, already swinging the stubber toward the entrance passage. I brace myself and cover my head on instinct. A second later, a muffled crump shakes the bunker. Dust trickles from the ceiling, and one of the already flickering light strips blinks out with a pop, leaving that corner in shadow. The aftershock passes and silence returns, save for the coughing of a startled sleeper jolted awake. Just another morning alarm in our besieged sanctuary. I release a breath I hadn't realized I was holding. That one was farther off. Maybe the orcs targeted another street or something above us, close enough to make my ears ring, but not a direct hit on our position. We've been extremely lucky on that count. The orcs have shelled our district sporadically for weeks, but our bunker is built under an administratum complex of plasteel and rockcrete. It would take a fortress buster to truly collapse this section. Still, even these glancing blows can send debris down ventilation shafts or cause the odd crack in the structure. Every rumble makes my heart jump until I'm sure we're all still in one piece. A few nervous chuckles break the tension. "They're waking us up, the brutes," someone mutters, eliciting a grim laugh from a nearby comrade. Gallows humor, one of our few defenses against despair. Sergeant Colt uses that moment to stride to the center of the room. He hops up on a steady munitions crate so everyone can see him in the dim light. "All right, listen up," he calls. His voice isn't loud, but it has a commanding edge that cuts through the low chatter. Bit by bit, we fall silent and turn toward him. Colt gives a curt nod when he has our attention. "Status for this morning," he begins, rubbing a dirty hand over his stubbled jaw. He speaks low Gothic with a stern, no-nonsense tone that reminds me of an old drill abbot from my scholar days. Enginseer Hallex reports the generator is stable, a few quiet sighs of relief at that, and filtration is running at about 60% efficiency. He gestures toward one of the red-lit gauges on the wall that indeed hovers around 60. It's not great, means the air is a bit stale, but it's not immediately deadly. Water purifier output remains steady. He glances at me and a few other civilians who handle maintenance. We nod back. We'll check it after this. Colt continues. We still have no Vox contact with command. A familiar heaviness settles in the room. We haven't heard a peep from High Command or anyone outside our little pocket in, Emperor knows, maybe a month now. Sometimes we pick up distant chatter or orc guttural nonsense on the short-range Vox, but nothing from our own forces. We expected as much this morning, but it still stings to have it confirmed. Again. The sergeant squares his shoulders. That said, it's business as usual. We stick to routine. He actually manages a thin, confident smile. If you've got a job, do it. Fire teams Alpha and Beta. You're on watch at main entrance and Corridor 1. Rotate in 2 hours. Civilians on maintenance. Check the sump pumps and air filters. That means you, Geert. He points at a former utility worker who nods. And you, Liz. A woman raises her hand. Sanitation detail. Clear the waste from Area 3 and make sure the chem powder's covering it proper. I don't want another bout of measles or worse, because someone's shirking the latrine. A few people chuckle. We had a scare with disease early on, until Father Elim improvised some antiseptic measures and strict cleanliness rules. Harsh as it is, cult discipline has kept us relatively healthy while cooped up. Cult then inclines his head respectfully toward Father Elim. Reverend, if you'd lead a prayer at third bell, it'd be appreciated. Father Elim, still kneeling by the shrine, looks up and gives a solemn nod. Of course, I shall prepare something special, he says in his gentle, raspy voice. By special, he likely means he'll dig up a scripture or two about perseverance or deliverance to keep us from losing heart. We can use all the morale boosts we can get. The sergeant's eyes sweep over all of us, meeting our gazes in turn. He wants to say something more, something encouraging, but he's never been one for flowery speeches. Instead, he simply says, "Emperor protects." The Emperor protects. A few of us reply in unison, myself included. It's practically instinct at this point to echo the phrase, even if some days I wonder if it's true. There's no harm in saying it, at least. You won't catch me openly doubting it. Emperor, forgive my private skepticism. With that, Colt steps down from the crate. The meeting, such as it is over, and people start moving to their tasks. It's almost impressive the way we've developed a daily rhythm in this subterranean purgatory. I guess humans can get used to anything, given enough time and lack of alternatives. As we disperse, I catch snatches of conversation flickering through the gloom. No one wants to discuss the glaring topic, no communications from outside, so instead they rehash the same rumors and speculation we've whispered about for weeks. Any word from the western bunkers? I hear one woman ask her companion quietly. Not since that last Vox a week ago, he replies, voice hushed. They might have gone dark. Another pair of civilians nearby are gossiping in low tones. I heard the whole Manufactorum district's gone, one says fearfully. Hit by gas shells, not a soul left. Her friend shakes his head. Nah, I heard from Brevik, our makeshift radio man, that some folks in Bunker Epsilon made it, holding out over by the Factorum with a bunch of wounded. Could be reinforcements reached them first. A middle-aged hab worker mutters to his bunkmate, They say the governor abandoned us, fled off-world in the first week. Well, if help's coming, it sure is taking its time, comes the bitter response. The truth is, nobody knows what's happening beyond our immediate surroundings. We're cut off. All we have are rumors to cling to. Each person chooses what they want to believe. For some, it's hopeful fantasies. The Imperial Guard must be right outside the city, preparing a counter-assault. For others, it's fatalistic. Everyone else is dead and we're living on borrowed time. I try not to put too much stock in any of it, but I'd be lying if I said I don't have my own private hopes. In my more optimistic moments, I imagine navy blue skyhawks screaming down through the clouds, leveling the orcs with precise volleys. I imagine salvation. In darker moments, I prepare myself for the possibility that no one is coming. On those days, I just focus on the next minute, the next hour. Keep busy. Keep breathing. One rumor going around lately is particularly unsettling. A few nights past, some of our folks swear they heard an orc loudspeaker blaring outside, broadcasting taunts and vile nonsense all over the city. We didn't catch it down here, too deep under Rockcrete, but up on the surface levels of the Hive ruins, the Greenskins apparently rigged a captured vox-hailer and spent an evening trying to break our morale. The scuttlebutt is they were shouting things like, "Humies, we's comin' fer ya. We'll stomp ya flat and eat your guts." Charming stuff. They even played some kind of booming, garbled music and crude war chants to keep people from sleeping. It sounds almost comical, like some drunk hooligan yelling threats at a wall. but picturing those guttural voices echoing through the empty streets all night, coupled with the occasional human scream or gunshot, it gives me a sick feeling. Orcs don't just try to kill you, they try to crush your spirit too, in their own blunt way. We do our best not to let them succeed. I set aside my empty bowl and tin cup and get to my own duties. I'm part of the maintenance detail. Before all this, I was a journeyman maintenance tech in the Ministorum quarter, keeping cogitators running, plumbing flowing, that sort of thing. Now those skills go toward keeping our little hole in the ground habitable. I head toward the corner where our water purifier and hydroponic tanks are set up. The purifier is a wheezing old machine against one wall, all pipes and valves. A steady drip of condensation leaks from one of its filters into a bucket. The hydroponic setup is just a few crates filled with algae cultures and some fungal clumps, makeshift fresh air and a potential emergency food source, though Emperor knows none of us want to eat the bitter mold unless we absolutely have to. On my way, I pass by a section of wall where someone has scrawled a message in black charcoal. I slow down to read it like I have a dozen times before. In rough high Gothic letters it says, "Hold fast, the Emperor protects." It was painted on at the very beginning of the siege by a PDF trooper with more optimism than sense. The paint is chipped and peeling now, but seeing those words every day has a strange effect. Sometimes I draw strength from them. Other times I sneer internally at the irony. Just below that slogan, a newer bit of graffiti has been added, this one in jagged charcoal strokes rather than paint. It reads, "Only in death does duty end," a classic imperial proverb of duty, scrawled here by one of the soldiers, or maybe a zealot civilian, to remind us that we're expected to fight and work until we drop. Comforting, right? In a way, though, it is comforting. It tells us, don't give up until you're dead, and since we're not dead yet, our duty continues. Grim encouragement, but encouragement nonetheless. I reach the purifier system. There, Mira and Crassus are already working. Mira is an agri-tech by trade, and she's taken charge of our little algae farm with a zeal that borders on religious. Crassus, the administratum clerk who caught a grot's knife earlier, is here too, his injured arm now wrapped in relatively clean bandages, courtesy of Sister Kalinda in the infirmary. Crassus looks pale but insists on helping. Sister Kalinda likely dosed him with some painkillers, but he's on his feet. They're carefully scraping some green algae off our mesh into a bucket, harvesting, I suppose, for the air scrubbers or for potential nutrients. The air in this corner is damp and smells vaguely of pond water and earth, a welcome change from the bunker's usual metallic tang. "Morning," I greet them softly. Mira gives a faint smile and Crassus lifts his good arm in a wave. Not many words are wasted these days on pleasantries. We all know what needs doing. I set down the stack of empty ration tins I carried from breakfast. They'll need to be cleaned at the purifier spigot so we can reuse them. Every bit of metal is precious. Emperor forbid we ever have to melt these down for shrapnel. But the thought has crossed my mind. The purifier machine gurgles and hisses, its status lights an inconsistent amber. I check a gauge, pressure's holding for now. This old thing has been my personal charge, and it hasn't been easy. A couple of weeks back, the purifier's heating coil blew in the middle of the night. The entire bunker filled with the acrid stench of burning insulation, and alarms started clanging. We all woke in a panic, scrambling to see if our one lifeline to clean water and air was about to fail. I remember Hallex and I rushing to open panels, him chanting the rites of ignition in binary, while I swapped in a spare coil, salvaged from a space heater. Sweat poured down my face as I tightened bolts and resoldered wires by flickering candlelight. For a scary half hour, the bunker's air quality dipped into the red and people started coughing, eyes watering. We were nearly done for without a single orc even stepping inside. But Omnissiah be praised, we coaxed the machine spirit back to life. When fresh, cool air finally flowed again, I could have cried with relief. After that near disaster, everyone treats the purifier and Halix with a lot more reverence. We assigned a round-the-clock watch to monitor any change in its hum or the smell of the air. We know our lives hinge on these aging pumps and pipes, and we'll nurse them as tenderly as needed. Filters clear, Mira reports, brushing her hands off on a rag. She has a smudge of green algae on her cheek and looks bone-tired, but her voice is steady. Every day she checks those growth tanks, skims off waste, and adjusts nutrient levels with an almost religious devotion. We'll get maybe an extra liter of water out of condensation today, she adds hopefully. Crassus manages a weak grin with cracked lips. Delicious distilled drip water. He jokes. Vintage of what is today. Who cares, as long as it's wet, I reply, kneeling by the purifier's spigot. I start prying open the used ration tins one by one and rinsing them with the sparse trickle of lukewarm water available. We'll need them clean to dole out tomorrow's allotment, whatever that might be. As I scrub the tins with an old brush, Mira joins me by the purifier, quietly helping. We work in silence for a minute, listening to the soft drip and the distant thump of bombardment. It's a companionable silence, forged by long hours in close quarters. Finally, she speaks, voice barely above a whisper. Did I hear correctly earlier? The rations crate is the last one. I nod, not trusting my voice for a moment. Tariq told me just now. We might have today and maybe tomorrow left. After that, Emperor knows. I keep my tone matter-of-fact, but the weight of it presses on my mind. Crassus closes his eyes, leaning against a pipe. Emperor have mercy, he mutters. I suppose we'll be eating algae paste and fungus stew soon. He tries to chuckle, but it comes out hollow. We all know our hydroponic setup can't sustain 50 people by itself. Better than eating each other, Mira says dryly, though her face twists at the morbid thought. Gallows humor, once again, our ever-present companion. I'd take fungus stew over long pork any day, I agree with a weak smirk. The very idea makes my stomach churn, but at least joking about it puts the horror at arm's length. Crassus shakes his head slowly. Let's hope it doesn't come to any menu changes at all. There's a flicker of genuine fear in his eyes, quickly masked by his attempt at levity. I finish rinsing one of the tin cups and hand it to Mira, who dries it with a scrap of cloth. No news from outside, I take it? I ask quietly. It's a ritual question, pointless maybe, but we ask each other anyway in hopes someone might have heard something through the vox static or faint signals. Mira just gives the slightest solemn shake of her head. Nothing. Only orc gibberish on the vox all night. Crassus snorts, cradling his bandaged arm. No news is good news, right? He offers weakly. I raise an eyebrow and reply with equal dry sarcasm. Sure, could mean the Planetary Defense Force is right outside, planning a big surprise party for us. He chuckles despite himself, and Mira actually lets out a soft laugh. It feels good to tease the situation, even darkly. In truth, we all know that silence from command likely means they're either too embattled to reach us, or worse, they're all gone. But humor is one of the few shields we have against despair. Our brief attempt at cheer is cut short by an interruption at the entrance to the hydroponics bay. Private Laren appears, one hand on the doorway. His eyes dart around and there's a tension in his posture. Maintenance team, he says quietly, not to alarm the others nearby. Everything all right in here? Fine so far, I reply, standing up from the purifier. Why, what's up? Laren steps in and lowers his voice. Just keep an ear out. I heard something weird down this way a while ago. Could be nothing, pipes groaning, rats, whatever, but just be alert, okay? I exchange a glance with Mira and Crassus. Weird noises in hydroponics? Aside from the constant drip and hum, this area is usually quiet. What kind of noise? Mira asks, wiping algae from her hands. Laren chews his lip. Not sure. A scraping, maybe. Like metal on metal? Only heard it once. Probably just the settling or some vermin in the vents. He forces a thin smile. I'm probably jumpy, but if you hear anything out of place, holler. Got it? Will do, I assure him. Truth be told, I've gotten used to strange scrapes and thuds in this old complex, shrinking metal as it cools, distant cave-ins echoing, overgrown sump rats scuttling in the walls. Usually it's nothing, but Laren wouldn't mention it unless it truly bothered him. Mira nods firmly. We'll keep watch, thanks. He gives us a quick salute-like gesture, an acknowledgement of our vigilance, then slips back out toward his post. Crassus lets out a shaky breath. As if I needed another thing to worry about. He attempts a grin. Could be just our friendly neighborhood rats, I say lightly, trying to ease the sudden tension. Emperor knows we have plenty of those. We've caught and killed a number of them, and quietly discussed if we could eat them if starving. So far, we haven't crossed that bridge. We resume work, but I notice Mira glancing occasionally toward the grated vent on the far wall. The back of my neck prickles. Laren's nervousness is infectious. Another quarter hour passes. I finish cleaning the ration tins and set them upside down to dry. Mira tends to the algae trays, and Crassus sits on an overturned bucket, resting his injured arm. The bunker is in one of its quiet lulls. The bombardment has moved to some other quadrant for now, and aside from a distant clatter of someone moving crates in another room, it's peaceful. The quiet is broken by a faint scratching sound. I freeze, holding an empty tin midair. Did I just imagine that? Mira's head snaps up, confirming I'm not hearing things. It's coming from the direction of the large air vent at floor level. The one Laren probably meant. Scrape, scritch, scrape. Very faint, but definitely there. It sounds like something dragging along metal, somewhere in the vent shaft beyond the grate. Crassus's eyes widen. He sets his bucket down as quietly as possible and reaches for a piece of pipe we use as a lever, a makeshift bludgeon should it come to that. Mira silently stands, wiping her damp hands on her trousers, and positions herself beside me. My heart starts to thud in my chest. Rats? No, this doesn't sound like the skittering of claws. It's heavier, deliberate. We exchange tense looks. I find myself instinctively reaching to my belt, where my last pistol hangs in a worn holster. Emperor, let it just be an equipment quirk or something benign. A low grunt echoes from the vent, not a human noise. A wet, throaty sound that turns my blood to ice. That's no sump rat. That's something far worse. Mira's eyes are hue in the dim light. I gently motion her and Crassus back, and I creep forward a step, drawing my last pistol with trembling fingers. The vent is about a meter square, covered by a metal grate bolted into the wall. Beyond it is darkness. The tunnel bends somewhere out of sight. I drop into a cautious crouch a few meters from the grate, pistol raised. My pulse pounds in my ears. The scratching has stopped. An oppressive silence hangs. Did it sense us? Mira, crouched a short distance to my right, hefts a small pruning knife she'd been using on fungus. Crassus stands behind us, pipe raised like a club, face slick with nervous sweat. In the stillness, I can hear my own breathing, shallow and rapid. A long moment passes. Nothing. Maybe it retreated. Suddenly, with a squeal of metal, the vent grate explodes outward. I yelp and fall back on my rear as a section of the metal grill clangs to the floor. A small, hunched shape hurtles out of the darkness in a blur of warty green flesh and ragged clothing. A grot. Emperor, save us. A filthy orc Gretchen has wriggled its way into our bunker. The diminutive Xeno lets out a shrill hiss, brandishing a serrated knife as it lands in a crouch. Beady red eyes gleam with malicious glee and triumph. It must have crawled through some duct or crack. The Emperor knows how. For the briefest heartbeat, none of us move. The shock is so absolute. Then chaos erupts. The grot lunges straight for Mira, who's nearest. It's fast, faster than any of us expected. Mira cries out as the creature barrels into her midsection, knocking her back into one of the algae tubs. Water and green sludge splash everywhere. They go down in a tangle, the grot snarling and stabbing wildly with its rusted shiv. "Mira!" Crassus shouts, and he swings his metal pipe with a feral yell. Clang! He strikes the creature across its shoulder. The grot screeches, momentarily stunned by the blow, and rolls off Mira, who scrambles backward, her shirt front slashed and dark with algae water. Please let it just be algae and not blood. The nasty little Xeno recovers with alarming speed, turning on Crassus now. Sharp teeth bared, it slashes with its knife. Crassus tries to block, but the blade slices across his forearm, ironically the same arm already bandaged. He yells in pain and falls back, dropping his pipe and clamping his hand over the fresh wound. My training, such as it is, finally kicks in through the haze of fear. My pistol. Shoot it! The grot is fully in my view now, an ugly, sinewy creature barely a meter tall, with mottled green skin, overlarge ears, and a mouthful of needle-like fangs. It wears a mishmash of scraps and a grimy tunic. Its red eyes flick toward me as I raise my laspistol, and it lets out a guttural snarl. I squeeze the trigger. Pew! The laspistol's report is sharp and deafening in the enclosed space. A lance of red energy crackles through the air, illuminating the hydroponics bay for an instant. My shot slams into the grot's chest. I wasn't even aiming. I just pointed and fired on instinct. Luck, or the Emperor's own guiding hand, the bolt burns a blackened hole dead center in the little monster's torso. The grot's snarl gurgles into a choked whine. The force knocks it backward. It collapses onto the wet floor in a contorted heap, knife clattering from its grasp. A whiff of scorched flesh hits my nose. I realize I'm holding my breath and let it out in a ragged gasp, pistol still trained on the twitching body. Silence falls, save for Mira's ragged breathing and Crassus's pained groans. My ears ring from the shot, but I remain fixated on the fallen creature, finger still on the trigger. Is it dead? The grot convulses once, limbs spasming, then lies still, a wisp of acrid smoke curling from the charred wound in its chest. A puddle of inky blood spreads beneath it, mingling with spilled algae water across the floor. It's dead. Emperor's mercy. I just killed something. My hands tremble violently, the laspistol suddenly feeling like it weighs a ton. But I can't afford to fall apart now. Mira pushes herself up from the algae trough, drenched and shaking. Aside from a shallow cut on her collarbone, likely from the initial scuffle, she looks uninjured, if badly rattled. Crassus, on the other hand, is slumped against the wall, his face ashen. Blood seeps through the fingers he's clamped over his wounded forearm. The old bandage is now soaked red in a new spot. Footsteps thunder down the corridor. Thank the Emperor, backup is here. Sergeant Colt bursts into the hydroponics bay, autogun raised, with Private Silva and another PDF trooper right on his heels. They take in the scene quickly. The blown-out vent, the dead grot, water and algae splattered everywhere, Mira dripping and pale, Crassus injured, me kneeling with pistol in hand. "What happened?" Colt demands, eyes blazing as he scans for any further threats. "Grot in the vents!" I manage to get out. "Boys..." My voice high with adrenaline. I force it steadier. "One of those little orc filth got in through the duct. It's down." I motion shakily at the smoking corpse on the floor. I shot it. Just the one, as far as we saw." Colt's organic eye widens and his jaw tightens. "A grot infiltration, one more nightmare come true." "Emperor's throne," he mutters, then immediately snaps into action. He gestures to Silva. "Check that shaft. Make sure no more of those runts are behind it." Private Silva doesn't hesitate. She steps over the body, flips down the low-light visor on her helmet, and peers into the vent with her rifle-mounted luminator. After a tense few seconds, she calls, "Clear. I see only the one, Sergeant. I'll seal this breach." She's already pulling a small handheld welding torch from her kit. Colt nods. He then moves to Crassus, who's sliding down the wall, eyes squeezed shut in pain. Colt's expression softens a fraction, seeing the wound. "Medikey's on the way," he assures, pressing a clean rag from his belt pouch against the cut. A trooper behind him keys his vox to summon Sister Kalinda. Mira kneels next to Crassus, helping to apply pressure to his arm. The poor man is breathing fast, but conscious. "It's okay," Mira murmurs to him. "You'll be okay." I suspect she's reassuring herself as much as him. I finally stagger fully to my feet, my legs like rubber. Collalt turns to me. His gaze flicks to the last pistol in my hand, then to the dead grot, then back to me. For a heartbeat, I worry he's angry I discharged a weapon without order. Old habits die hard. Civilians aren't usually allowed firearms, after all. But then a thin, grim smile cracks his face. "Good work," he says quietly, clapping me on the shoulder. "Emperor knows how it got this far, but you stopped it." My mouth is dry, but I manage a nod. I wasn't the only one. Mira and Crassus, they..." He holds up a hand. "We'll sort it out later. Important thing, you held fast, and now we know their little tricks." He raises his voice for all to hear. "This confirms it, people. If one grot can find a gap, more might try. Seal all secondary vents and ducts now. No shaft is too small. Cover it or guard it. Understood?" A chorus of affirmatives answer from the gathering crowd of bunker dwellers who had followed at a distance or are listening from adjacent rooms. Fearful, wide-eyed faces peek from doorways, but I also see resolve hardening in them. We knew the orcs would come eventually. None expected them to sneak in like rats, but a threat faced is somehow less terrifying than one unknown. Silva, having welded a scrap metal plate over the vent opening. The air in here will be a bit worse for it, but better that than an open door to the enemy. Stands and salutes Colt. "Vent sealed, sir. No more grots getting in that way." Colt nods. "Good, Laren," he barks, knowing exactly who was on duty near this section. Laren appears in the doorway, face flushed with guilt. "I warned him soon as I heard something, Sarge," he starts. "You did fine," Colt interrupts. "Keep your post and stay sharp, and send someone to double-check the storeroom vents as well." Laren looks relieved he's not being scolded. "Yes, sir." He hurries off, already voxing a couple others to assist. Within minutes, the immediate crisis is handled. Sister Kalinda arrives and tends to Crassus, tutting as she rebandages his arm with practiced efficiency and a dose of antiseptic. Emperor willing, infection won't set in. Mira hovers close, helping as needed and whispering encouragement to Crassus, who winces but manages a faint smile her way. I lean against the wall, finally allowing myself to process what just happened. A gout of smoke from the grot's corpse stings my nose. Someone rolls the body over with a boot, and I see my lasbolt burned straight through its scrawny chest. I feel a nauseating mix of triumph and revulsion. I killed a living thing. Granted, it was a disgusting Xeno that would happily cut our throats, but still, I did that. My hands won't stop shaking. Colt crouches by the dead grot, examining it with a soldier's scrutiny. "Damn thing must have been exploring the old drain tunnels," he mutters. "They're testing us for weaknesses." He stands and raises his voice to address everyone nearby. "No more open vents or shafts, got it? We're bottling this place up tight. If there's even a gap the size of a grox's arse, seal it or set a trap there." There's a round of determined nods. If the orcs think they can flush us out like rats with rats of their own, they have another thing coming. We might be terrified, but terror can be channeled into vigilance. As the adrenaline ebbs, a wave of fatigue and delayed fear crashes into me. I realize I'm covered in algae and grot blood spray, and my ears are still ringing. But we're alive. Emperor be praised, we're alive, and the greenskin isn't. Small victories. The rest of the day, if I can even tell day from night down here, passes tensely. The news of the grot incursion spreads through the bunker like wildfire. People react in different ways. Some get angry. How dare those creatures violate our sanctuary? Others quietly weep out of sight. Nowhere seems safe anymore. Most, however, respond by steeling themselves. They double-check their weapons, even if it's just a shiv or a sharpened rebar. They volunteer for extra watch shifts. A few of the older civilians gather the children into the most central room, as far from any outer wall or vent as possible, and keep them entertained with simple games and stories to distract them from the fear. We will not be caught unawares again. True to his word, Sergeant Colt has every secondary ventilation duct and hatch either welded shut or constantly monitored. A new roster of sentries is assigned solely to listen for scratching or movement in the walls. The bunker settles into a heightened state of alert. Sleep will be even scarcer tonight, but at least we'll be prepared. That afternoon, at third bell, we keep time by an old mechanical chronometer salvaged from someone's hab unit. Father Ilium leads us in a short prayer service. It's a welcome break from the anxiety. We gather in the center chamber where he set up the Aquila shrine. Some of us sit on ammo crates, others stand or kneel. The dim red lights and flickering candles cast our haggard faces in an almost holy glow. Elim raises his hands over a small ledger of scriptures, one of the few books we have recovered from the rubble. In his soft, quavering voice, he begins the litany of endurance. In darkness, we are the Emperor's light. In fear, we are the Emperor's strength. In defeat, our faith is victory. We respond in unison, quietly but together. In him we endure. He gives a short homily reminding us of saintly figures who were tested and did not break. He speaks of the trials of Saint Sabratine, who survived the siege of Gormand Hive, and of the promise that the Emperor is with us even now. I can't say everyone fully believes it. Some stare blankly, lost in their own misery, but the sound of that old priest's unwavering voice is a balm in its own right. After the formal prayers, Father Elim invites anyone who wishes to offer words. Brave old Magda stands and rasps out a plea for the Emperor's mercy on the little uns here. She pats Tomas's curly head as she speaks, and I see the boy offer a tiny smile for the first time in days. A grizzled PDF veteran with a bandaged leg, one of Colt's men, I don't recall his name, offers a curt, heartfelt thanks to the Emperor for letting him live to protect his comrades just one more day. Even hard-bitten Silva, our resident sniper, surprises us by quietly adding a prayer for her husband, who died off-world in the Guard years ago, asking that she see him again if it is the Emperor's will. I see tears glint on her cheeks as she speaks. Hearing that nearly breaks something in me. Her usual iron demeanor cracked just enough to show the aching human beneath. We're all carrying wounds, seen and unseen. To close, we recite the simple creed. We pledge our souls and our lives to you, Emperor of mankind, in this life and the next. Your light guides us. Your will strengthens us. It's the loudest we've collectively spoken in weeks. It's not exactly thunderous, more of a hoarse, unified whisper, but it echoes in the bunker halls with a force beyond volume, saying those words together, affirming that we still serve a purpose, that we haven't given up. I have to admit, it lifts a bit of the weight from my chest. When it's over, Father Elim intones, "The Emperor protects," and we all murmur, "He protects." The group begins to disperse, some faces looking a touch more hopeful, others at least less burdened for the moment. I linger by the shrine a moment, taking a breath. I'm not a zealot by any stretch, but I respect what the good priest accomplished here today. There's a faint smile on Elim's lined face as he tends the shrine's candle, and I realize he needed this as much as we did. As folks head back to their posts or corners, I find myself sitting beside Jaren near the main entrance corridor. We both have a short break from duties. Jaren, the stoic miner, is cradling his stubber-loaded autogun in his lap, staring off toward the sealed bunker door. He's been awfully quiet since the grot incident. I settle next to him on a munitions crate, not sure if I should disturb his thoughts. But after a while, he breaks the silence himself. "I was out there when it started," he says suddenly, voice low and gravelly. I turn to look at him. His eyes are fixed on nothing in particular, as if seeing some distant scene play out. "In the city," he clarifies. "I was topside, hauling a load from the mines to the Factorum when the first sirens went off." His thick fingers drum absently on the rifle stock. "Thought it was a drill at first. Then I saw it." "It?" I prompt gently. Jaren's lips press into a thin line. "One of their landers. A big hulk of scrap belching smoke, coming down like a comet. We thought maybe it was debris or a downed shuttle, until the AA guns opened up on it." He gives a humorless chuckle. "I nearly drove off the overpass watching that thing. By the time I got my rig under control, the sky was full of dropships and rocks. The defense batteries were lighting the clouds on fire and parts of the city were already burning. I hadn't known Jaren saw the invasion from the very start. My own experience was sudden and confusing. I was in an underhive transit tunnel when the first bombardments hit, and by the time I made it up to mid-hive, all I saw was smoke and people stampeding for shelter. My transport crashed when an orc rocket hit the hab block next to the roadway, Jaren continues, his voice monotone. Next thing I knew, I was on the ground, half covered in debris, and my co-driver was, well, he wasn't as lucky as me. He flexes his left arm, the one he always rubs. Busted this arm pretty bad. I wandered, half in a daze, until I ran into a PDF squad setting up a defense line in Hab Sector 22. They were calling for any able-bodied to help, so I picked up a rifle from a dead kid and joined them. He falls silent for a moment, the only sound the distant thump of artillery and the soft tap-tap of his finger on the weapon casing. I know better than to interrupt. "We held for maybe 3 hours, he finally says, voice thick. 3 hours of hell. Orcs came in waves. I swear, some of them were laughing as we shot them. We had one heavy bolter and it jammed in the first 10 minutes, so it was lasguns and prayer after that. I must have fired 1,000 shots, burned out the barrel. Emperor, I might have hit a few of the bastards. Hard to say, they just kept coming. I see his hands shaking slightly, and I offer him my canteen. He takes a sip, then continues, eyes distant. We heard on the Vox that command ordered retreat. The lieutenant yelled for us to fall back to the bunkers. I didn't want to turn my back on those green-skinned bastards, but the others were already pulling out, so I ran too. That's when I got here, more or less. He looks around the bunker. Traded one hell for another, I guess. At least here we're still alive, I say quietly. Jaren nods slowly. Aye, most of us anyway. He closes his eyes and I know he's picturing someone. My crew, guys I've worked with for years, they didn't make it. I didn't see them anywhere in the crowd that got through the doors. Guess they were too far out when the bombardment started. I keep wondering if I should have tried to find them, but there was no time. You did what you could, I say. It feels inadequate, but it's all I have. None of this is your fault. He lets out a long breath. War, he mutters, almost spitting the word. We all grew up hearing how glorious it is to die for the Emperor, how noble to fight his enemies. They don't talk about this. He gestures around at the crumbling walls, the injured lying on bedrolls, the sheer exhaustion in every face. They don't talk about the waiting and the hunger and... He chokes off whatever he was going to say. We sit in companionable silence for a while, side by side on that crate, sharing a canteen of tepid water. There's nothing more to say. His story, my story, everyone's story here. It's the same nightmare with different details. Still, hearing him speak so openly reminds me we're not alone in our fears. We carry them together. After a few minutes, Jaren clears his throat and stands, hefting his autogun. Better check on the others at the perimeter, he says, already pulling his stoic mask back on. All right, I reply. And Jaren... He pauses, glancing back at me. Thanks for telling me. I'm sorry about your friends. He gives a curt nod, and if there were more he wanted to say, he keeps it in. That's Jaren's way. As he walks off to relieve a sentry, I silently repeat the end of the litany of endurance. We endure for those who cannot. Time crawls on. The hours after midday are relatively quiet, save for distant artillery rumbling and the constant clatter of our own activity as we fortify every weak spot we can find. True to Cult's orders, we spare no effort in bottling up this bunker tight. Any duct too important to seal, like the main intake vents, gets a barricade and an armed guard 24/7. Makeshift alarms are rigged from empty cans and scrap to jangle at the slightest disturbance. We even prop up the corpses of a couple of slain vermin near entrances. Superstitious as it is, some think the smell of certain predators might discourage the smaller greenskins. I doubt it'll fool an orc if it really wants in, but it makes folks feel better. During what I assume is late afternoon, we have an unexpected development, though this time a hopeful one. I'm in the storage alcove inventorying our remaining power cells, down to 4 half-charged ones, grim, when Sergeant Cult beckons me over. By his side stands our Enginseer Halix, a cluster of mechadendrites twitching over his shoulder. And with them is Private Laren, looking a bit anxious but excited. We've been talking, Cult says without preamble. Halix thinks the vox-relay in the governor's spire might still be intact. I blink, not sure where he's going with this. The palace spire? That's outside, isn't it? I try not to let outside sound as daunting as it feels. Khalil nods. There's a maintenance conduit that runs from our bunker toward the palace's sublevel. It was meant as an escape route or a service tunnel. Collapsed halfway in the initial shelling, but... He glances at Halix. The tech priest's augmetic eye glows as he speaks in his monotone buzz. Sensor scans indicate a possible path around the collapse, through drainage ducts and sub-hive maintenance shafts. I calculate a 67.8% probability that a small team could reach the vox-relay substation in the palace substructure. My heart skips. He's talking about leaving the bunker, going out there, but also about maybe reaching a communications array. You want to call for help, I breathe, the realization dawning. Calt offers a tight smile. That's the idea. No one's responding to our short-range vox. But if we can patch into the palace's long-range vox, maybe we can get a signal to orbit or to any guard force's planet side. Something. Hope and dread war inside me. Hope that someone might actually hear us. Dread because to do this, someone has to physically make that journey through Emperor knows what horror in the half-ruined tunnels. Calt continues. I'm sending a small team, 2 of my best, Laren and Silva, and 1 tech-savvy civilian to interface with the machinery. He looks directly at me. Me. Of course me. I'm the closest thing to a communications tech we have, and Hallex can't go because he's literally wired into keeping us alive here. I feel a jolt of fear at the thought of leaving the comparative safety of these walls, but at the same time I feel oddly honored, and more than that, determined. If there's even a chance we could get word out and bring help, how could I not do it? I swallow hard. All right, when do we move? Tonight, Calt says. 0200 hours, when it's quietest. Orcs get less active at night, usually. He slides a small data slate into my hand. Halix has loaded this with encryption codes and a canned distress message. Plug it into the Spire cogitator, and it should broadcast on all Imperial frequencies. The Enginseer makes a slight binaric chant, probably praying the data's intact. I nod, my mouth suddenly dry. Understood, sir. Calt places a hand on my shoulder, a surprisingly gentle gesture. In a low voice meant only for me, he adds, and come back in one piece, all right? That's an order. There's a hint of warmth in his tone I've never heard before. A nervous chuckle escapes me. Yes, Sergeant, I plan to. With that, it's settled. I spend the remaining daylight cycle preparing. I gather a satchel with tools, an extra power pack for my laspistol, a coil of rope, a small glow lamp, and a water flask. Basically anything that might be useful in the dark, unknown beneath the hive. Laren and Silva do similar, checking weapons and armor. Silva assures me with her typical blunt confidence, "We'll get you there." I nod, grateful for her presence. Her sharp eye and sniper rifle have saved us more than once in prior firefights. A few of the others catch wind that we're up to something. Mira corners me by the hydroponics bay. "Where are you going?" she asks, worry etching lines on her dirty face. I consider lying, but these might be my last words to her if things go ill, so I tell her, briefly, about the plan. Mira's eyes widen, but she presses her lips into a thin line and just says, "Emperor be with you." She hesitates, then gives me a quick, fierce hug. "Please be careful," she whispers. "I will," I promise, trying to sound braver than I feel. She nods and steps back, letting me go without further protest. It strikes me that for the first time since we got stuck down here, there's a spark of genuine hope in her expression. Father Elim also notices our small party assembling near the sealed-back maintenance hatch around 1:45. He silently walks over and makes the sign of the Aquila over us. "The God Emperor's light guide you in the darkness," he intones. Durin shifts a bit uneasily. He's not the most pious sort, but we all bow our heads respectfully. Even if you're not devout, can't hurt to have a priest's blessing before stepping out into hell. Finally, at what we reckon is around 2 o'clock, everything is ready. The bunker is mostly dark, aside from a few red emergency lumens. Most civilians are trying to snatch some sleep, but a handful of defenders and civilians gather quietly to see us off. Magda, Jaren, Mira, Kalt, Halix, a few others. It feels momentous in a way. No one's left this bunker since the gates were sealed in the first days of the siege. We're venturing into the unknown, but everyone knows why. We have to try something. We assemble by a small circular hatch on the bunker's floor in an out-of-the-way storeroom. It's an escape tunnel originally, leading into the underground service ducts. It has remained dogged shut so far. Now, with weapons ready and hearts pounding, we're going through it. Laren turns the heavy wheel to unlock the hatch. There's a hiss as the seal breaks. It's supposed to be airtight, evidently it still was. A waft of stale, cool air rushes up from below, carrying the scent of damp stone and decay. We all click on shoulder-mounted luminators, lances of white, cutting into the pitch-black hole. I take a deep breath. Emperor, give me strength. Ready? Silva whispers. Laren nods once, then looks at me and gestures. After you. I grip the ladder rungs and begin the descent. My boots leave the familiarity of our bunker and step onto the rungs of a world unknown. I resist the urge to look back up. If I do, I might lose my nerve seeing those anxious faces watching me go. The climb down is about 5 meters. The shaft is tight, lined with slick concrete. I count the rungs and try not to imagine any surprises waiting below. My boots splash unexpectedly into ankle-deep water at the bottom. I suppress a curse. It's cold and foul-smelling. I raise my luminator. I'm in a narrow maintenance tunnel just tall enough to stand in if I crouch a bit. Laren, who's taller, will have to stoop. The walls are mossy brickwork and utility cabling, glistening with damp. This must connect to old drains running under the hive. The water around my feet ripples with each step. Hopefully it's just groundwater or runoff, not raw sewage. One by one, Silva and Laren climb down behind me. Laren secures the hatch above us. For a return trip, we left it able to open from either side, but locked it to prevent anything else following behind. The faint echoes of the hatch wheels screeching, then clanging shut, reverberate down the tunnel. And then we are alone in the subterranean darkness. Silva takes point, her carbine sweeping ahead, luminator beam dancing over the curved tunnel walls. Laren signals for me to stay between them. He'll guard the rear with his shotgun and lasgun. Fair by me. I'm the payload, essentially. We creep forward. Each step of our boots splashes lightly, the sound unnaturally loud to my ears. The air is cooler down here, heavy with the smell of mold, wet stone, and something like rotten eggs. Probably sulfur from ancient wastelines. I try breathing through my mouth. It's slow going. We don't want to make a racket. Emperor knows what could be lurking in these forgotten veins of the hive. Orcs, mutants, feral animals. My mind conjures all sorts of horrors. My skin prickles with the sensation of unseen eyes in the dark. More than once we pause because one of us thinks we hear something. Our breaths halt, weapons ready. But each time it turns out to be just the trickle of water or the distant booming of the war above transmitted through the ground. Nevertheless, my heart refuses to stop hammering. After about 20 minutes of trudging, we reach a section where the tunnel ahead is completely caved in, tons of rubble blocking the way. This matches Halix's schematics. The direct path to the palace collapsed as expected, but his data suggested an alternate route. To our left is a circular access hatch rusted at the hinges. Silva wipes grime off a plague green sign next to it. It's in faded high Gothic, Drainage Subsection 3B. That's our detour. Laren and I together manage to yank the heavy hatch open with a grating shriek. So much for stealth. We wince and wait a few breaths, but nothing comes to investigate the noise. The Emperor's with us thus far. Beyond the hatch is a squeeze, an old drainage conduit that we have to crouch to pass through. It slopes downward, deeper under the city. The going gets tougher here. The floor is slippery with algae, and who knows what slime. At one point, my boot lands on something that gives a sickening squish. I decide not to shine my light on it and just keep moving. As we progress, my mind wanders to the memory of the last time I was outside the bunker. It feels like another life. Emperor, is it daylight up there now? Is the sky blue or gray with smoke? I push the thoughts aside. Focus on one step at a time. We encounter our first obstacle about 100 meters in. The drainage tunnel opens into a larger junction chamber, and we find it half flooded. There's no way around. We'll have to wade through chest-deep, murky water to get to the other side. Silva scowls, but simply holds her rifle aloft and pushes in without complaint. Laren and I follow suit, biting back groans as the frigid water engulfs us up to our armpits. At least the water is fairly still. If it were rushing, we might be swept into Emperor knows where. We make it across, dripping and shivering, but otherwise fine. I silently pray my pistol and the data slate inside my waterproof satchel are still functional after that dunking. We continue. The deeper we go, the more it feels like we're trespassing in some primeval underworld. Our lights cut through thick cobwebs hanging from overhead pipes. Fat, pale vermin skitter away from our footfalls, some kind of sump rats or gigantic bugs. It's hard to tell, and I'd rather not know. The only consolation is we haven't encountered any orcs or their telltale markings. They tend to slap crude glyphs or graffiti wherever they go. So far, this route seems unused by them. Too soon, that changes. We're passing through a section of reinforced concrete tunnel when Silva halts abruptly. She raises a closed fist. Stop. We freeze, listening. At first, I hear nothing but my own panting breath. Then I catch it. A faint clank, and wet footfalls echoing from a side passage to our right. Along with it, guttural grumbling voices. Orcs? Here. Silva quickly douses her luminator. Laren and I do the same. We're plunged into darkness. I hug the wall, forcing myself to breathe silently through my mouth. My heart thuds so loudly, I'm sure the enemy can hear it. The noises grow louder. Through a maintenance alcove, I glimpse a dim green glow, probably the phosphor lamp of a crude orc device, casting monstrous shadows on the wall of an intersecting tunnel ahead. Silva leans back to us and whispers, barely audible, "Patrol. 3 of them. Orc and grots." I nod. My eyes are adjusting to the dark, and I can make out hunched shapes crossing an opening maybe 10 meters ahead at a junction. A bulky figure about the height of a man but far broader stomps through the shallow water in that tunnel. Even in silhouette, its movements are unmistakably orcoid. The swagger, the long arms lugging a big slugger or shooter. Behind it scurry 2 smaller shapes, chittering and laughing nastily. Grots. Emperor's blood. A patrol. They might be using these drains as well. Silva gestures for us to stay absolutely still. One stray splash or cough right now, and we're done. She carefully, slowly raises her carbine, fitting the bulky shape in her weapon's low-light sight. The orc stops in the junction, sniffing the air. In the dark, I see the glowing cherry of something. By the smell, an orc fungus cigar. The brute exhales a plume of foul smoke. It barks something in its guttural language to the grots. One of them cackles in reply. I grip my laspistol tight under the water, finger on the trigger, my whole body trembling with tension. The orc suddenly turns its piggish head in our direction. Did it hear us? My blood freezes. The beast takes a lumbering step toward our tunnel entrance, raising a crude flashlight of its own that barely pierces a few meters ahead. I see its ugly face now, jagged teeth, beady red eyes squinting. It sniffs again. I swear I can smell its breath from here, a reek of rotgut and raw meat. In the darkness beside me, Laren slowly and silently lifts his shotgun, ready to unleash if we're discovered. I flick the safety off my last pistol under the water. The orc is maybe 5 meters from our hiding spot, separated by a rusted maintenance gate. It pauses, narrow eyes scanning. My heart feels like it will explode out of my chest. One of the grots pipes up from behind it in their grating tongue, sounding impatient or mocking. I can't tell. The orc snarls something back and, by some emperor-given grace, turns away with a dismissive grunt. It apparently decides nothing of interest is down our branch. With heavy clanks of its boots, it resumes its march down the main tunnel, the grots following and snickering. We remain motionless for a long count of seconds after the clanking echoes fade. My entire body is trembling with adrenaline. That was too close. Far too close. Silva's the first to move, inching back and carefully turning on her luminator hooded beneath her hand. In the faint glow on her face, I see sweat beading on her brow. She gives a small nod and whisper, "Clear. For now." Laren lets out a long breath, and I realize I've been holding mine as well. The three of us exchange looks that say what we don't speak aloud. Emperor above. We carry on, now doubly cautious. We thank whatever saints are listening that the orc patrol headed away from our destination rather than toward it. The rest of the journey, mercifully, we don't encounter more greenskins, though we find evidence of them. At one point, our path intersects a larger drain corridor where we find a crudely painted glyph on the wall in reeking greenish pigment, an orc face with an arrow pointing the way the patrol had gone, likely a marker for their raiding parties. We slip past it and continue, making sure to leave no trace of our own passing. After what feels like an eternity navigating the labyrinth, likely an hour or two in reality, Laren quietly signals that we should be nearing the coordinates Helix provided. We climb a slippery ladder to an upper conduit, squeeze through a half-collapsed archway, and then I feel a thrill of triumph. We see a faint light ahead that is electrical. Thin slivers of orange light filter through a barred opening. We carefully approach and peer through. It's an old maintenance grill overlooking a sub-basement corridor, a place I recognize from the palace schematics. On the far wall, partially illuminated by a still-functioning lumen strip, is an Adeptus Mechanicus cogwheel symbol above a console. Praise the Omnissiah. That looks like the Vox substation. Access. Silva pries the rusted bars quietly, and Laren uses a bit of leverage with his combat knife to pop the corroded bolts. In under a minute, we wriggle through and drop into the palace sublevel. I sniff. This area's air, while stale, isn't as foul as the drains. The corridor here is wide enough to stand comfortably and has an arched ceiling. It's clearly taken hits. Cracks vein the walls, and debris and dust coat the marble-tiled floor. But it hasn't caved in, not yet. We sweep our lights around carefully. No bodies, human or orc, in sight. For all its decay, this level feels eerily empty. There, Laren points to a reinforced door labeled Vox Control, authorized personnel only in High Gothic, miraculously intact. It hangs slightly ajar. The locking mechanism looks like it was manually overridden, likely during the initial evacuations or defense. We stack up, the soldiers flanking the door. Laren nudges it open with the muzzle of his gun. I slip in first, pistol raised, my hands surprisingly steady now that we're here at the goal. The Vox control room is small but intact. Glow globes in the ceiling flicker weakly, giving just enough illumination to see banks of cogitator units, vox panels, and cabling along the walls. A fine layer of dust covers everything. There's evidence of a fight, spent casings on the floor, a splatter of old blood on a console. But no bodies. Perhaps the defenders made a stand here at some point, then moved on. I immediately spot the primary Vox terminal, an auspicious machine covered in blinking runes and switches, miraculously still powered. A faint hum of generator power is audible, likely from emergency generators somewhere. The green standby rune on the main cogitator blinks steadily. This is it. All clear, Silva whispers from the doorway after a quick sweep. Laren positions himself facing the hallway, just in case. I sling my las pistol and almost reverently slide my data slate out of my satchel. It's already connected by a cable to an encryption cog key Halix provided. With a deep breath, I approach the Vox terminal. The machine spirit's presence is almost tangible, thrumming behind the panel. All right, let's hope you're in a talking mood, I murmur, more to myself than anyone. I find the appropriate access port, an ancient serial cogitator link. My data slate has an adapter. I plug it in. The slate's screen flickers to life, auto-loading the program Halix prepared. Lines of code scroll rapidly. Uploading, it says. My heart thuds in anticipation. If this works, if someone hears... Emperor, let someone hear this. The cogitator screen above suddenly blossoms with static and a burst of sound. An open Vox channel. I hurry to adjust the frequency to the emergency band, inputting the encryption code Halix provided. The machine spirit chirrups and complies. For a moment, nothing. The data slate shows the distress message cycling out, repeating on loop. Coordinates, situation, orc invasion, civilian survivors, please for aid. Silva steps closer, her eyes fixed on the console as if willing it to answer. Then a crackle, a blip of sound. We all hold our breath. Through the speaker comes a burst of garbled High Gothic. Pete, this is Captain Verrill of the Imperial Navy ship Star of Sacrifice. We read your signal. Ground forces inbound to your location. Hold fast, loyal citizens. The Emperor's angels are coming. Reinforcements inbound in approximately 3 hours. Hold fast. Emperor protects. My jaw drops. We stare at the Vox unit, hardly daring to believe our ears. The message begins to loop again, but we've heard enough. A strangled laugh bubbles out of my throat. They heard us. By the throne, they heard us. Laren punches the air, a grin splitting his grime-covered face. Silva actually lets out a tiny whoop under her breath and claps me on the shoulder once, firmly. There are tears glistening in her eyes. Tears of joy, a sight I never thought I'd see on that hardened soldier's face. I quickly key the mic. My voice shakes with excitement. This is Bunker Epsilon, Gathalamor Hive. We read you, Star of Sacrifice. Emperor's blessing on you. Reinforcements acknowledged. We will hold. I release the transmit stud, not even sure if they still listen or if one way was all we get. But I had to say something. The console crackles briefly. Perhaps it's my imagination, but I think I hear a faint reply. Acknowledged, Bunker Epsilon. Hold fast. We're coming. I slump against the console as the signal clears, feeling lightheaded. We did it. Emperor's teeth, we actually did it. Laren is already voxing cult on our short-range unit. Sergeant, do you copy? The message got through. Reinforcements inbound, ETA 3 hours. We can hear the whoop of triumph from Colt on the other end, and a roar of celebration behind him from everyone who overheard. It's the sweetest sound I've heard in forever. Hot damn, you did it. Colt's voice is uncharacteristically exuberant over the crackly link. All right, get your butts back here in one piece, double time. We'll be ready to hold out until they arrive. Emperor be praised. Emperor be praised indeed. I disconnect the data slate, offering a silent prayer of thanks to the Omnissiah for this machine's functioning, and to whoever up there made this possible. If I weren't so dehydrated, I might cry. Silva, always pragmatic, gives me a gentle nudge. Time to move. Greenskins might have heard that signal burst. She's right. An unsecured transmission might have drawn ears, though the encryption should mask content. We waste no time departing the way we came, though our steps are lighter now, our hearts buoyed by hope. We retrace our path, back through slime and water and dark, but it doesn't feel as oppressive. 3 hours. We just have to survive 3 more hours and help will be here. It seems unreal. We do have a near brush on the return. As we approach that junction where we encountered the Orc patrol, we hear the unmistakable crack of gunfire echoing distantly. Lasfire and Orc shooters exchanging shots somewhere far off, likely on some other level or tunnel. The Orcs must have found other survivors or defenses. The fight is not just in our little corner. Others are still out there resisting. That spurs us to move even faster. By the time we reach our bunker's hatch again, we're exhausted, soaked, but grinning like fools. Laren raps the pre-arranged code on the hatch. 2 quick bangs, 1 slow. It's opened from above almost immediately. We practically crawl out into a crowd of hands that help haul us up. As I emerge, blinking in the comparatively bright lantern light of our bunker, I'm greeted with a scene I will remember to my dying day. Everyone in that room is smiling. Smiling. Hollow-cheeked civilians with tears of joy in their eyes. Battered PDF troopers clapping each other on the back. The children, Tomas and Leora, are bouncing in a corner, not fully understanding but infected by the elation around them. Magda actually cackles with delight and grabs my face the moment I'm on my feet. "You blessed boy," she cries, and plants a grandmotherly kiss on my filthy forehead before bustling off to hug Silva and Laren in turn. Mira is there too, and before I can say anything, she throws her arms around me in a fierce embrace. "I knew you'd do it," she whispers, voice thick. I hug her back, feeling weeks of tension start to uncoil inside me. Colt pushes through and actually laughs as he shakes Laren's hand and thumps Silva's shoulder in congratulations. When he reaches me, he extends his hand, then, on second thought, pulls me into a one-armed hug. "Emperor's favor, you did it!" he exclaims. Coming from stern Colt, that's like exuberance beyond measure. I realize I'm grinning so hard my cheeks hurt. "They heard us, Sarge. They're really coming," I say, almost giddy. Across the bunker, Father Elim has sunk to his knees, leading whoever wishes in a spontaneous prayer of thanksgiving. Some join him. Others are too busy chattering excitedly, a sound so foreign after months of whispered fears. The jubilation lasts only a minute before Colt, ever the soldier, calls for order. All right, settle down." He's smiling too, can't hide it, but he raises his voice in command. "You heard the news. Reinforcements inbound, 3 hours out. That means we're not done. We hold this bunker for 3 more hours, no matter what the greenies throw at us. You hear?" A rousing, "Yes, sir," answers him from practically everyone. Even the civilians stand a little straighter, clutching makeshift weapons with renewed vigor. It's amazing what tangible hope can do to a person. The despair hanging over us has lifted, replaced by determination. 3 hours. We can survive 3 hours. Emperor, give us the strength. Colt immediately sets us to work. Double-check all defenses. Get those last grenades and charges prepped. We'll use everything we've got left. No point holding back now. And someone get a signal flare or two ready to mark our position when the Navy boys arrive. There's a bustle of activity as people spring into action. The sergeant pulls me aside for a moment, grip firm on my shoulder. "You did damned well, Techie. Damned well. Now rest a minute, then get your last charged and find a firing spot. We need every able hand for the last stretch." "Aye, sir," I reply. He doesn't need to tell me twice. I'm bone-tired, but I'd crawl on broken glass right now if it meant living to see salvation come. Before he rushes off, Colt meets my eyes, his expression softer. In a low voice, he adds, "And thank you. You gave us a chance." I feel a lump in my throat and simply nod. In that moment, I see the weight of all our lives that he's carried on his shoulders, and I'm glad we could lighten it at last. We start reinforcing every barricade, reloading every weapon. The last few frag grenades are distributed to those who know how to throw them effectively. The heavy stubber is positioned covering the main approach with a full belt loaded. Laren mans it with Magda, of all people, feeding ammo. She insisted, and no one dares tell that tough old woman no today. I gulp down some water and half a nutrient bar while slapping a fresh power pack into my laspistol. My hands are trembling, not with fear this time, but with exhilaration. Reinforcements are coming. Emperor's Angels, the captain said, likely meaning Adeptus Astartes, or Elite Guard. The thought sends shivers through me. Some here are fantasizing about which chapter or regiment might show. I hear snippets of excited speculation. Maybe the Ultramarines. I bet it's the Cadians. They never let orcs win. Throne, imagine if it's the Space Wolves. Heard they love a good siege. Whoever it is, the fact remains. We just have to keep breathing until they get here. And damned if we'll let the orcs snatch victory from us now. Not when deliverance is within reach. That renewed resolve is just in time, because the orcs, whether by luck or design, choose this moment for one last grand assault on our bunker. It begins, as it often does, with an ominous silence followed by the distant echo of an orc horn. But this time, multiple horns answer in chorus from different directions. Laren, peering through a periscope slit, calls out, "Movement! They're gathering out there, lots of them." No doubt the greenskins have finally decided to crush this pocket of resistance once and for all. They couldn't have known help is en route. Or if they do, it's coincidence. But it tracks with our cursed luck that our hardest trial comes at the final hour. Colt makes quick rounds, ensuring everyone is at their station. I find myself in the second line of defense, crouched behind an overturned metal work table we've set up as an impromptu barricade about 10 meters back from the main blast doors. Mira is beside me, clutching a lasgun with fresh cells. She's not a great shot, but by the Emperor she'll try. Jaren is nearby too, face set in a grim grin as he hefts a scavenged orc slugger in one hand and a heavy mining pick in the other. He plans to do some personal mining, if it gets to close quarters, it seems. A low rumble builds outside, like thunder rolling over the plains. We know that sound well by now. The war cry of an orc horde preparing to charge. The walls faintly reverberate with their guttural, exuberant WAAAGH. My mouth goes dry despite the adrenaline pumping through me. They're coming. "Final positions," Colt shouts over the rising din. "Remember, 3 hours. We hold for 3 hours, then the Emperor's cavalry will be here to mop these bastards up. Give 'em hell in the meantime." A cheer, an actual cheer, goes up from our defenders. It's a ragged, half-mad sound, but it's full of defiance. I tighten my grip on my pistol and glance at Mira. She gives me a quick, brave smile and even a wink. Emperor, I realize, for the first time, we truly believe we might survive this. The orcs announce their attack with their typical subtlety. First, a cacophony of bestial war horns and bellowed chants of "Wah!" echo through the ruins above us. Then comes the telltale whistle in the sky. We brace ourselves. Boom, boom! A pair of heavy detonations slam the ground above our bunker. They've opened up with artillery or rocket launchers. The overhead lights flicker wildly as the bunker shakes. Dust and small bits of debris rain from the ceiling, coating us in a fine gray powder. A few people yelp, but no screams of injury. Those hits were close but not direct, thank the Emperor. Another whine, and Crump shakes the main corridor. The shockwave rattles my teeth. But our bunker dome holds firm. After a half-dozen more shells pounding the vicinity, the barrage stops. A tense pause. My ears ring in the sudden silence. In that lull, I distinctly hear the next sound, the pounding of orc boots, the clatter of crude metal armor, and above it all, the blood-curdling roar of a mob of orcs in full charge. They're coming at us from ground level, likely swarming through the blasted streets toward our bunker's reinforced gate. We can't see the main door from our angle. We're behind a bend in the entry corridor, but the two heavy defensive gun positions covering it have vision slits. Laren is on the stubber at one, and a PDF trooper named Hale is on a mounted auto rifle at the other. They open fire almost in unison. The heavy stubber's thud, thud, thud joins the auto rifle's faster daka-daka, creating a wall of lead spewing out of the murder holes into the kill zone just outside the door. The muzzle flashes strobe the dim corridor, and the noise is deafening. I can't see the carnage, but I can imagine it. Orcs charging headlong across open ground toward our door, being mowed down in droves by our prepared guns. Good. The longer they stay out there, the more we thin them. Red warning runes flicker on an Auspex unit one of the tech-savvy civvies has set up. Movement on flank sensors, both sides, he shouts. The brutes are encircling us, no doubt. One thing about orcs, they love a straightforward frontal assault, but enough of them have a devious streak to try side tunnels or alternate entries if they can. We've blocked most of those, but a determined orc with a power claw can make a new door where it pleases if given time. A horrid crash suddenly resounds at the main blast door, metal on metal. The orcs have something like a battering ram or perhaps a looted Imperial guard, Ogrin, smashing at it. The whole bunker reverberates with each impact. Our door is solid plasteel and ceramite, but we know it won't hold forever under sustained assault. "Fire teams, on my mark, fall back to inner choke points," Colt commands over the din, preparing for the eventual breach. "Keep up suppressive fire until then." I'm in the second line, so for now I can only wait, sweating, while the first line pours everything they have out through firing slits and cover. The stubber hammers relentlessly. I see Laren's face contorted in a battle cry behind it. Brass casings clink and pile at his feet. Magda feeds the ammo belt steadily, her lips moving in what looks like a prayer or curse. From beyond the door comes an almighty boom, an explosion that lights up the entry hallway with a flash of red-orange. The orcs likely set off a charge against the blast door. A chunk of the ceiling near the doorway collapses, sending rubble scattering. Hale, at the auto-rifle slit, ducks back coughing from the dust and acrid smoke now billowing in. Through the now buckled door, I can actually hear orc voices clearer, victorious howls, and the rev of some crude engine. Emperor, help us. They might have a death drill or breaching rig. "Back to second positions," Colt orders, choking on dust. "Go, go, go!" The front line defenders peel away down the hall toward us at the bend. They practice this retreat a dozen times in drills, and it shows. Laren is last, laying down a final burst from the stubber before he abandons it and runs, slinging his lasgun. The moment he passes our corner, two of our people yank a makeshift release, dropping a pre-positioned slab of scrap metal down from the ceiling. It lands with a resounding clang, forming an improvised barricade halfway down the corridor. It won't stop the orcs, but it'll slow them and provide partial cover for us. I grip my last pistol tightly and whisper a fervent prayer. Emperor, grant me aim. Mira beside me mutters her own under her breath, something like a plea to see her family again. We hear another massive crash, the sound of the bunker's outer door finally giving way. A triumphant chorus of orc war cries rattles our bones. They're in. Now! Colt shouts. Our second line of defense erupts in gunfire as soon as the first green-skinned shapes barrel into view down the entry corridor. I pop up over our overturned table barricade and finally see them. Hulking orc silhouettes in the flickering light, shoving aside the scrap slab obstacle with brute strength. They come howling, weapons gleaming, muzzle flashes sparking as they fire wildly on the move. The noise is overwhelming. Orc guns make a horrid daka-daka racket, and our lasguns crack back in sharp retorts. Bolts and slugs spark off walls and floor. An orc grenade bounces down the hall, but miraculously fails to detonate. Cursed greenskin munitions are as unreliable as they are deadly. I sight my last pistol on the first orc, emerging over the barricade, a giant with a horned helmet and a chain axe. Before I can fire, a brilliant lance of light from Silva's last rifle catches it full in the face, burning out one of its red eyes. It roars in pain, stumbling. I seize the moment and put 3 quick last shots into its broad torso. The bolts scorch its crude armor and it staggers, but shockingly it still stands, bellowing fury. Finally, Jaren puts it down for good. A full auto burst from his purloined orc slugger hammers the brute until it collapses in a heap, skull finally punctured by a heavy round. Emperor, these beasts are tough. All down the line, similar struggles play out. Orcs clamber and shove against each other to force into the corridor, met by our determined defenders pouring fire into them. Here, in the choke point, their numbers count for less. Only a few can push through at a time, and over their fallen bodies at that. A particularly large orc, wielding a crude metal slab as a shield, bulldozes forward, soaking up blast fire that scars its makeshift plating but doesn't penetrate. It's nearly upon our barricade. With a guttural laugh, it heaves its shield, actually an ripped hatch door, over the table and straight into our firing line, knocking 2 of our militia flat. The orc raises a massive cleaver, ready to vault over after it. "Flamer, now!" someone yells. A torrent of liquid fire washes out from our side corridor, courtesy of Corporal Tariq and the 1 flamer unit we had left. The Prometheum gouts over the advancing orc shield-bearer, engulfing it in flames. It gives a hideous shriek as its flesh ignites. The corridor briefly lights up like a forge, showing a dozen more brutes behind it, cringing away from the sudden inferno. The burning orc staggers wildly and collapses right in front of the barricade, thrashing and spreading fire to a couple of grots that got too close. A cheer goes up among us at the sight of the enemy recoiling, however momentarily. But the flamer's Prometheum is limited, the burst ends, and soon the surviving orcs, many singed and furious, are pressing forward again, climbing over the charred remains of their comrade. Tariq's flamer bought us a little time and took out a few, but now its fuel tank is hissing on empty. They keep coming. Emperor, there are so many. I see a big knob with a powered claw ripping aside debris to clear a path for the others. Silva puts a lasbolt square between his eyes, and he drops like a puppet with its strings cut. Thank the Emperor for her steady aim. Another one, huge, tattooed with glyphs of their evil gods, lurches through, swinging a chain whip. That one is met by a withering crossfire from 3 lasguns, including Mira's, which pepper it until it resembles a smoking sieve. "Grenade out!" someone from our side hollers. I duck as one of our last fragmentation grenades sails over our barricade. The blast that follows showers the orcs with shrapnel. A few howl and fall. For a heartbeat, nothing comes through the smoke. Are we holding? The silence is sudden, save for the crackle of small fires and ringing ears. Then a terrifying sound, an orc war cry far deeper than the rest, echoes down the hall. The smoke parts and I see it. A truly massive orc, easily a head taller again than the knob we dropped earlier, its skin a darker green, its muscles corded with grotesque strength. It wears mismatched pieces of heavy armor plating, and on its head an unmistakable boss pole draped with grisly trophies. WAAAGH! The war boss bellows, its voice a booming thunderclap in the confined space. It charges, firing a huge slugger, one-handed. The muzzle flash illuminates a face twisted in berserk fury. That beast is leading from the front, pushing its own underlings out of the way as it barrels toward us like an angry bull grin. Laren and two others concentrate fire on it, red la blasts, puncturing its thick armor and flesh. But it's like trying to stop a charging grox with bee stings. The war boss laughs off the hits, those smoldering craters open in its torso. It crashes directly into our barricade, a slab of living muscle and metal. With one sweep of a power claw crackling with energy, it shears the heavy table we had as cover in half. I stumble back in pure terror as the barricade we thought solid is literally torn apart in front of my eyes. A couple of our people are caught by that swing. One militia woman, Sola, is cleaved at the waist in an instant, a look of shocked disbelief on her face as she topples in two pieces. Another man, Brevik, is knocked aside by the backhand of the claw, his chest caved in. For one awful moment, the war boss stands nearly within arm's reach of me, towering and splattered with blood, its eyes wild with the ecstasy of slaughter. It raises that giant claw, letting loose a roar that rattles my bones. I'm dimly aware of Father Elim behind us, clutching the Aquila around his neck and shouting prayers over the din. "Stand firm, for the Emperor is with us." Whether anyone hears or not, I cannot tell. The war boss's claw begins to descend, aimed right for me and Mira behind me. Time seems to slow. I see every dent and bloodstain on that wicked contraption as it comes down like the jaws of a steel predator. I don't think, I just react. I lunge forward and up, firing my last pistol frantically at the orc's face. One shot burns across its jaw, another singes its neck. It snarls and swats at me with its free hand, sending me sprawling to the side. My pistol flies from my grip. I hit the ground hard amid broken pieces of our barricade. Dazed, I look up to see the war boss looming over me now, having changed targets. It sneers, baring yellow fangs. The power claw's motor whirs as it opens wide, then swings down toward me like a hydraulic guillotine. I roll desperately, grabbing at anything. My fingers close on a loose chunk of concrete. Not much of a weapon, but pure instinct makes me hurl it at the beast's face with all my strength. The hunk of rock-crete cracks against its bulbous nose. It's like throwing a pebble at a grox, just enrages it further. Time slows. I see that massive claw descending toward me. So this is it, I think distantly. Emperor, protect my soul. Boom! A blue-hot bolt of energy slams into the war boss's head from the side, turning it into an exploding melon of bone and viscera. I flinch as gore splatters my face. For an absurd second, the decapitated orc remains standing, the stump of its neck cauterized by the plasma bolt. Then its knees buckle and it collapses with a crash inches from me, making the floor shake. I gape, ears ringing, scarcely processing what just happened. That was no lasgun or stubber. I've never seen a plasma weapon in my life, but that searing trail and messy result could be nothing else. A black-armored giant steps through the smoke where moments ago the orcs had flooded. My breath catches. It's an armored figure, easily as massive as the war boss, but moving with controlled, predatory grace. In the hazy half-light, I glimpse a glint of polished ebony and silver armor, a flowing tabard scorched from battle, and a sculpted helm with eye lenses glowing a fearsome red. An Astartes, space marine. It can be nothing else. For a heartbeat, I truly wonder if I've died and the Emperor himself sent an avenging angel to retrieve my soul. But behind this first warrior, I see more shapes. Hulking silhouettes pouring into the corridor, opening fire down its length with bolt guns that roar like caged thunder. Their armor isn't uniform. Some is midnight black like the first, trimmed with silver, others a deep crimson with sable shoulder pads marked by a red cross. I realize it's not just one chapter. Multiple Adeptus Astartes forces are here. They move with swift purpose, and in seconds the corridor beyond is awash in fire and death. But now it's the orcs who are on the receiving end, the surviving greenskins, who a heartbeat ago were hell-bent on exterminating us, are caught completely off guard by this sudden onslaught at their rear. In the flash of bolter muzzle flares, I witness orc bodies blown apart, limbs severed, torsos cratering under explosive shells. Their bellows of rage turn to screams of confusion and pain. One tries to turn and run back through our blasted door, only to be cut down by a blur of silver lightning, chain blades in the hands of a pair of Marines who storm past their firing line. The two Astartes hack the fleeing orc literally into pieces with their chainswords in a matter of heartbeats. The speed, the brutality. I've never seen anything like it. These are truly the Emperor's angels of death. The orcs still in the corridor are in disarray, caught between our desperate defense and the fury of the Space Marines. Leaderless now, the war boss's corpse lies smoldering at my feet. Many of the brutes panic or lose whatever semblance of coordination they had. A few still fight on madly, firing point blank at the Marines or charging with chopper raised, only to be scythed down by disciplined bolter fire or crushed by power fists. I see one particularly large knob leap at the first black-armored Marine, only to be caught mid-air by that warrior's massive gauntlet. He lifts the Xeno off its feet with contemptuous ease, and with a single thunderous squeeze, crushes the orc's skull into pulp. Thrown. Within moments, it's over. "Area secure," intones a deep, rumbling voice from within a horned black helmet. The first Marine, presumably their leader. He lowers his smoking plasma pistol and surveys the corridor, making sure no orc remains standing. I realize with a start that we survivors are staring in awestruck silence. Our weapons hang in our hands, battle forgotten, as we gaze at these towering saviors. We must look affright, bloodied, filthy, wide-eyed, like souls given a second life, which, in a way, we are. For an instant, nobody moves. The Space Marines are an imposing sight, 8-foot-tall giants in ornate power armor, each one worth more than a platoon of normal soldiers, if the legends are true. They seem to fill our bunker corridor with an aura of majesty and terror all at once. Then Father Elim steps forward from behind me, his Aquila clasped to his breast. With a sobbing gasp, he drops to his knees. "The Emperor's angels," he breathes, tears streaking through the dust on his cheeks. "Thank you, O merciful God Emperor." His words break the spell. A wave of emotion rushes through the rest of us. Some start cheering hoarsely, others weep openly, overcome by relief. Little Tomas slips free of Magda's grasp and actually runs up to the nearest Space Marine, a stern, black-armored giant with a skull-faced helm, and tugs on the edge of his tattered tabard. The Astartes gazes down in surprise, or what I imagine is surprise beneath that skull mask. In a tiny voice, Tomas asks, "Mister, are you gonna save us?" The skull-helmed Marine regards the boy for a moment. Then, ever so gently, he places his huge armored hand on Tomas's head in a sort of pat. He gives a small nod. It's such a simple gesture, but I feel a lump in my throat at the sight of this colossal war god showing a tender mercy to a child. "Clear the way!" comes a shout from behind. Through the haze, more figures appear. Human soldiers now, not in bulky armor, but in flak and carapace. The Imperial Guard has arrived as well, it seems. A medici team pushes into the corridor, one carrying a red-stamped case, another guiding a servo stretcher drone. The Navy trooper leading them looks around at us, grinning. "Any wounded here in need of aid?" he calls. The question is almost laughable. Nearly everyone is wounded in some manner, from scratches to grave injuries. But Emperor be praised, many more of us are alive than I'd dared hope if those orcs had broken through. Immediately, Sister Kalinda rallies and starts pointing out who needs treatment first. Crassus is among them, his arm wound reopened in the melee. I slowly push myself up from where I had sprawled during the war boss fight. Everything hurts. But Emperor, I'm alive. Mira rushes over to me, practically tackling me in a hug. "We held them," she laughs shakily in my ear. "You're alive. We're alive." I hug her back, feeling tears of joy finally spring free. Over her shoulder, I see Sergeant Colt limp into view. His thigh sports a bleeding gash, but he's too high on victory to care. He meets my eyes and gives me a fatigued, triumphant grin and a nod. I nod back, grinning like a fool. All around, similar scenes play out. Silva, tough old veteran, slumps against a wall, quietly thanking the Emperor between heavy breaths. Jaren, bleeding from a cut on his forehead, actually whoops and pumps his fist when he catches my eye, as if to say we made it. Father Elim is openly sobbing and laughing at once, consoling an equally overwhelmed Magda and a few others in a little prayer circle, even as guardsmen begin gently guiding them to an assembly point. The Space Marine leader, his sable armor adorned with a silver Aquila and purity seals, steps toward Colt. Removing his helmet with a hiss of escaping air, he reveals a craggy, pallid face and stern gaze. "Who commands here?" he asks. His voice, unfiltered by Vox, is deep and oddly calm, given the carnage. Colt straightens, or tries. His wound makes him wobble. I do. PDF Sergeant Colt of Gathalamor Hive's 12th Regiment. The Astartes captain nods. "Captain Rakan of the Angels Penitent," he introduces himself briskly. None of us really know that chapter, but it hardly matters. They're angels to us. "Well fought, Sergeant." "You and your people held the line." Colt actually flushes, either from praise or blood loss or both. "Only because you arrived when you did, sir. We'd have been overrun in another minute." Captain Rakan's hard face softens a fraction. "Yet here you stand, guardsmen. The Emperor protects." "The Emperor protects," Colt echoes quietly, as if tasting the phrase anew. I see him glance over at Father Elim and the others with a look of profound gratitude. Maybe, I think, he truly believes it now. Nearby, another black-armored Marine in apothecary markings is already tending to one of our critically injured militiamen, administering some advanced coagulant from his narthicium. The giant apothecary's touch is surprisingly delicate as he works, almost reminiscent of Sister Kalinda's gentle care, though his patient is dwarfed by his massive gauntlets. More human soldiers, naval armsmen, and a few guardsmen flood into the bunker halls, securing every nook and checking fallen orcs for any lingering life. A few trigger-happy troopers gleefully plug extra last shots into the corpses, just to be sure. The atmosphere is electric with victory and relief. Many of these rescue troopers wear broad smiles as they distribute water canteens and wrapped ration bars to us like we're honored comrades rather than ragged refugees. Emperor bless them, some even slap our backs and congratulate us on holding out. I slump down against a wall for a moment as the adrenaline ebbs, letting a Navy medic quickly wrap a pressure bandage on a minor shrapnel gash on my arm. Around me, I hear snatches of conversation from our rescuers. "Got civilians here. Medic-y teams to the front. Enemy presence in this sector eliminated or in full retreat. Bring that stretchers this way." The words blur into a comforting buzz. It feels like waking up from a nightmare into the warm chatter of a morning kitchen. Mira sinks down beside me, leaning her head on my shoulder. Neither of us say anything. We just watch the surreal bustle of salvation all around. The bunker that for months echoed only with despair and distant gunfire now rings with the clamor of friendly voices, the stomp of boots that mean safety, not threat. It's over. Emperor's Light, it's really over. After a time, Colt and Captain Rakan approach me. The captain's helmet is back on, concealing his face, but his tone carries something almost like respect. "You must be the one who got the Vox working." I blink and nod, suddenly self-conscious under the red gaze of his helmet's eye lenses. "Yes, sir. We managed to send the signal that reached you." "Well done," he says simply. "Many more lives would have been lost had you not. The God Emperor was with you." I flush, not knowing what to say. Colt claps my back gently, mindful of the bandage there. "This here is our resident tech whiz," he says to the captain. "Not an adept, but ought to be," he adds with a grin. I stammer something about just doing my duty. Captain Rakan nods once more, then moves off to oversee final sweeps, his massive form gliding through the rubble with preternatural grace. I slowly get to my feet. "We should go up," I say to Mira. "I want to see the sky again with my own eyes. Perhaps I need to truly believe this isn't just another dream." She stands with me. We make our way gently through the throng of medics and jubilant survivors toward the blasted entrance of our bunker. As we pass, Magda reaches out and squeezes my hand with a watery smile. Laren and Silva are sitting on an ammo crate getting their wounds tended. Laren gives me a thumbs up despite a fresh bandage over one eye. Father Elim is speaking with a trio of bewildered-looking civilian survivors being led out from another nearby shelter. Apparently, we weren't the only pocket saved today. Elim's face lights up with fresh hope as he ministers to them, welcoming them into our fold even as we all prepare to leave this tomb behind. Mira and I step out through what used to be our bunker's door. Dawn's light has finally broken across the sky, a new day in the Imperium. We shield our eyes for a moment, unaccustomed to the brightness. The world outside is a scene of ruin and rebirth. The city beyond is devastated, jagged husks of hab blocks and plumes of smoke under the early sun. But amidst that ruin move scores of Imperial dropships and aircraft in formation. I see a Valkyrie screaming overhead, banking as it heads deeper into the Hive, chasing remaining orcs, no doubt. On a nearby thoroughfare, a column of Leman Russi tanks rumbles by, the proud pennants of some reinforced regiment fluttering in the morning breeze. And above our Hive spire, trailing fire like angels of vengeance, are the contrails of descending drop pods and Thunderhawk gunships, bringing in even more reinforcements. War still rages elsewhere in the city, but the tide has unmistakably turned. We survive to see it. The plaza in front of our bunker is littered with orc dead, testament to the last stand we fought. And yet it doesn't fill me with horror now. Instead, I feel a fierce pride. We did this. We few, against all odds, held our ground until deliverance arrived. My gaze drifts upward beyond the smoke, to the pale blue sky emerging as the sun climbs. Emperor above. I almost forgot what morning truly looks like. Mira slips an arm around my waist, leaning into me as we both stare at the sky. Her voice is a whisper full of wonder. It's beautiful. I nod, swallowing the lump in my throat. The air smells of ash and promethium, yes, but also of something fresh on the breeze. Hope, perhaps. I draw a deep breath of it. It's the sweetest thing I've ever tasted. I glance back at the now ruined bunker entrance. Those heavy doors twisted and torn open by the orcs and marines alike. That dark hole has been our entire world for so long, a prison and a sanctuary combined. Now we leave it behind to step into a world made new by the Emperor's grace. As survivors assemble for evacuation, I spot Sergeant Colt helping Sister Kalinda carry a wounded guardsman. He insisted on helping, bad leg and all. He catches my eye and mouths, "You okay?" I nod and give a thumbs up. He grins, truly grins, and returns it. We held, our eyes say to each other. Throne we actually held. Nearby, Father Eliam has raised the tattered banner of the Aquila that someone brought from inside, and a few survivors join him in a spontaneous hymn. Their voices are cracked and off-key, but it's the most glorious sound I think I'll ever hear. Mira gently squeezes my waist. "Ready to go home?" she asks, quiet joy in her tone. I look around at our shattered city, at the rescue forces securing the area, at the cluster of our bunker survivors laughing, crying, and embracing one another amid the rubble. Home. It's not the same home we knew. Much has been lost that can never be replaced, but we're alive, and our home now is what we carry in each other. If there's a home left, I'm ready, I reply, a small smile tugging my lips. She smiles back, understanding the layers in my answer. Home might be a pile of rubble now, but we'll rebuild it together. That's what humanity does. We endure, we rebuild, we remember. We begin walking toward a waiting Navy shuttle, joining a line of survivors and wounded being guided aboard. I glance one last time over my shoulder at the bunker, that tomb of dark days. Somehow, in the golden morning light, it doesn't look so menacing now, just a scar in the earth, soon to be healed and forgotten. That place saw our worst fears and our bravest deeds. We lived in that nightmare and made it through, together. A shiver runs through me as I exhale, like releasing a held breath from months of tension. Around us, the distant war still echoes, sporadic gunfire, the crump of artillery as pockets of orcs are mopped up. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war. I used to believe that as an absolute. And indeed, war will likely reach us again in some form. This world will bleed more before this is over. But in this small corner of the galaxy, on this new day, I have seen something else too. Mira and I pause at the ramp of the shuttle, turning our faces up to feel the warmth of the rising sun. We share a look, tired, battered, but alive and hopeful. For once, I murmur with a faint, weary smile, the slogan was right. The Emperor really did protect. Mira's eyes glisten as she nods. I think I finally believe it. So do I. Perhaps he works his will through the hands of his servants, be they a determined sergeant, a clever techie, a brave civilian, or a mighty space marine. But he was with us. I won't ever doubt that now. As we step aboard the shuttle to a new chapter of our lives, I allow myself one last genuine smile, unguarded and free. In the grim darkness of the far future, there is indeed only war. But today, in this little pocket of that darkness, there is victory. Hard fought, dearly bought, but ours. And by the throne, it tastes sweeter than anything I could have imagined. In a galaxy of endless war, a single day's reprieve, our survival, is a triumph beyond measure. And I'll gladly take it.